I thought I'd just found an injured animal in the woods, until it looked at me with human eyes. The next morning, my cabin was surrounded by something far bigger than I ever imagined. What happens when you rescue a baby Sasquatch, and its entire tribe comes to take it back? The forest was quiet except for the crunch of my boots on the damp leaves. It had rained the night before, and fog hung low between the trees like slow smoke. I had been hiking for 3 days, deep in the Olympic Mountains, farther than most people ever go. The air smelled like pine sap and wet earth, and every sound carried, each drip of water, each snap of a twig. My pack was heavy on my shoulders, and the trail had nearly vanished under moss and fallen branches. I was crossing a narrow ridge when I heard it. Soft at first, then louder, a cry. Not a bird, not a coyote. It was thin and high, like a baby. My stomach tightened. There were no houses for miles. I followed the sound down a steep slope covered in slick rocks and ferns. The crying grew sharper, desperate, and I slid the last few feet on my hands and knees into a small ravine. At first, I saw nothing but broken roots and mud. Then, something moved near a fallen log. A small shape, covered in matted brown fur, tangled in the roots. It whimpered again, a sound that didn't fit the woods. I stepped closer. Its head turned toward me. The face stopped me cold. It wasn't an animal's face. The eyes were wide and amber-colored, with a look of pain and fear that went straight through me. Its nose was flat, its mouth small, and its hands, 5 fingers, just like mine, clutched the roots. I froze. Every part of me screamed to back away, but I couldn't. It was hurt. A deep cut ran along its shoulder, blood dark against the fur. I pulled my knife from my belt, cut through the roots, and lifted it free. It was warm and heavier than it looked, maybe 20 pounds. It let out a low, breathy cry and buried its face against my jacket. My hands shook. Whatever it was, it trusted me. I wrapped it in my blanket and started back up the ridge, one slow step at a time. The air felt thicker now. I could feel something watching me. Every few minutes I turned around, but the trees stood still, heavy and dark. Once I thought I saw movement between 2 trunks, something tall and gray-brown, but when I blinked, it was gone. It took me nearly an hour to reach my cabin, a small wooden place I built near a stream. I set the creature on my cot by the fire and cleaned the cut with warm water. It whined softly but didn't fight. Its breathing slowed as I wrapped its shoulder with gauze. When I tried to step away, it reached out and gripped my wrist. Its hand was small but strong, and its skin felt warm, almost hot. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing noises outside, deep, heavy thumps in the dirt, branches snapping in the dark. Once, something brushed against the window. I grabbed my flashlight and shined it out. Nothing but fog. The forest that had always felt peaceful now seemed alive and watching. The baby stirred in its sleep, letting out tiny hums that rose and fell like whispers. Near midnight, a long, low call echoed through the valley. It wasn't human. It wasn't any animal I knew. The sound rolled through the trees and made the glass in my window tremble. The baby woke and answered with a soft, trembling sound. My heart thudded hard. I turned off the lantern and sat in the dark, listening. Somewhere out there, beyond the fog and trees, something big was moving toward me. I didn't know it yet. But the moment I carried that small creature out of the ravine, my quiet mountain life was over forever. Morning came gray and cold, with a thin mist rolling through the trees. My fire had gone out sometime in the night, and the air inside the cabin smelled like smoke and damp wood. The small creature was still asleep on the cot, its chest rising and falling in slow, steady breaths. I sat at the table and watched it for a long time, unsure of what to do next. Sunlight slipped through the cracks between the boards and landed across its fur, showing how thick and coarse it was, like that of a bear but softer in color, a dark brown with hints of red when the light hit it right. When it finally opened its eyes, it blinked at me and made a soft sound that reminded me of a hum. Its mouth moved as if trying to speak, but no real words came out, only a low, strange tone. I handed it a piece of bread, and it sniffed it first before taking the smallest bite. Then it smiled, a quick flash that showed small, square teeth. That single smile made my chest tighten. Whatever this was, it wasn't just some wild animal. I tried to act calm, but my thoughts kept circling the same question. What had I found? I'd seen tracks before, heard stories from old hunters, strange footprints near the river that people said belonged to something big walking upright. I always laughed at those tales. But now, one of those stories was sleeping on my cot. After breakfast, I took my camera from the shelf. I didn't want to scare it, so I spoke softly while lifting the lens. "It's okay, little one. Just a picture." The shutter clicked, and it flinched at the sound. I took a few more photos of its hands, its feet, its eyes. When I checked the images on the screen, my breath caught. The details were too clear, too real. I had the proof of something the world had only whispered about. That's when I noticed the silence. The forest outside had gone still. No birds, no wind, nothing. I stepped to the window. The mist had thickened again, and shapes moved just beyond sight, like shadows shifting behind a curtain. My dog, Scout, started growling low in his throat, the fur on his back rising. I grabbed my rifle and went to the door. The woods smelled different, musky and sour, heavy with the scent of wet fur and earth. I didn't go far. Just beyond the stream, pressed deep into the mud, were tracks. Big ones. Each print was almost 16 inches long, with toes that spread wide and deep. There were more than one set, at least 3, maybe 4. They circled the cabin, some fresh, some older. My stomach turned cold. They'd been watching while I slept. Back inside, the creature was awake again, sitting upright and staring at the window. It made a soft clicking sound in its throat, over and over, like it was calling for something. I tried to calm it, but it wouldn't stop. Then, from the forest came a faint reply, a low, distant sound, answered by another closer this time. The baby froze, eyes wide. All day, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I tried the radio, but all I got was static. My phone showed no signal. The power line that ran to the cabin flickered once, then went dead. By evening, I had the lanterns burning and every door locked. The forest outside was too quiet, as if every living thing was waiting. That night, while the fire burned low, I studied the infant. I took notes, measured its hands and feet with my tape measure. Each finger longer than a human's, with a thin layer of black skin under the fur. Its body was warm to the touch, almost feverish. When it looked at me, I could feel something strange, like it understood me, like it was trying to read my thoughts. It followed me everywhere, copying what I did. When I whittled a stick, it reached for a twig and did the same, clumsy but focused. When I laughed, it made a chirping sound, as if trying to laugh back. But every time I opened the door to step outside, it grew anxious, clutching my sleeve and letting out short, panicked breaths. Then came the knocking. It started just after midnight, slow, heavy, like a hand the size of a shovel tapping the side of the cabin. Scout barked once, then went silent, tail between his legs. I held the rifle and whispered, "Who's there?" No answer. Just another knock, closer this time on the wall near the window. The baby whimpered, pressing itself into my chest. I waited, heart pounding, until the noise stopped. When I finally dared to look out of the window, I saw them. 4 tall shapes standing among the trees. They didn't move. They just watched. Their eyes caught the firelight, glowing faintly like amber glass. One stepped forward, and for a moment I saw its face, wide, covered in dark fur with deep lines around the eyes. Then it turned and vanished into the fog, and the others followed. The forest swallowed them whole. When morning came, I walked outside to find new tracks everywhere, dozens of them, circling the cabin, leading into the woods and back again. In the center of the clearing, laid carefully on a flat rock, was a bundle of leaves, tied with vines. Inside was a single smooth stone, marked with lines that looked like symbols. I didn't know if it was a warning or a message, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't alone anymore. Somewhere out there, they were watching, waiting, and I had something that belonged to them. The air around the cabin had changed. It was thicker now, like it held its breath. Even the light felt different, gray and dim, as though the forest had swallowed the sun. I hadn't slept in 2 nights. Every sound outside made me jump. Every shadow on the window made my heart pound. The baby Sasquatch, who I'd started calling Ash because of his smoky-colored fur, stayed close to me, never more than a few feet away. He was stronger now, eating better, moving faster, but his eyes always looked toward the woods as if waiting for something to come. I tried to pretend everything was fine. I made breakfast, cleaned my tools, and chopped wood. But the forest had gone quiet again. Not even the creek beside the cabin made its usual sound. Sometimes I'd see a dark shape between the trees, standing still for a long time before melting back into the mist. Once, while cutting logs, I looked up and saw a figure watching me from across the clearing. It stood at least 8 feet tall, shoulders wide as a doorframe. It didn't move when I stared back. Then, without a sound, it turned and slipped behind the trees. That night, the fog rolled in thick and heavy, so dense I couldn't see more than 10 feet ahead. I sat by the fire with Ash on my lap. His little hands clung to my arm, his breath warm against my sleeve. He hummed again, that strange low tune, rising and falling like a word I couldn't understand. My chest tightened. I could feel him trembling. Round midnight, a sound came from the woods, a deep, low rumble that made the floorboards shake. It wasn't thunder. It was closer, deeper, almost like a growl, but longer, drawn out until it faded into silence. Then came another, from the opposite side of the cabin. Then another, from behind. My hands started to sweat as I reached for my rifle. Scout, my dog, whimpered and crawled under the table. Ash lifted his head, eyes wide and shining in the firelight. He made a short call, sharp and high, almost like he was answering. Then he turned to me and grabbed my jacket, pulling it toward the door. He wanted to go out there. I shook my head. "No, not yet," I whispered, but he didn't stop. He kept pointing to the woods, calling again, louder this time. The forest answered. Dozens of low calls echoed back, layered one over another, deep and mournful, rolling through the fog. My chest felt tight, my throat dry. I could hear them moving now, the soft thud of heavy feet, branches creaking, the rustle of wet leaves. They were all around us. The knocking started again, not on one wall this time, but all sides at once, slow, steady, like a heartbeat. The windows rattled. Scout barked and then went silent again, tail tucked. I backed toward the corner, holding the rifle tight, though I knew it wouldn't matter. The baby pressed against my leg, his tiny fingers digging into my pants. Then, as suddenly as it started, the knocking stopped. The forest went still. The only sound was the crackle of the fire. I waited, barely breathing, listening for anything. That's when I heard it, a sound so faint I almost thought I imagined it. A soft, deep voice, not human, speaking from just beyond the door. The tone was calm, almost gentle, like a low hum or chant. Ash lifted his head and answered with a small sound. The voice spoke again, slower this time, sir. I couldn't understand a word, but somehow I knew what it meant. They wanted him back. I crouched beside the window and peered out. In the fog, I saw them. Shapes, tall and wide, their eyes catching the firelight like small lanterns. There were at least a dozen of them now, maybe more, circling the clearing. The biggest one stood closest to the door. Its shoulders rose higher than the roof, its arms long and still. It didn't move closer. It just stood there, waiting. Ash let out a small cry and reached for the door handle. I grabbed his hand, shaking my head, but he looked up at me, his amber eyes wet and shining. I saw something in them I didn't expect. Understanding. He knew he didn't belong here. My throat burned. I knelt down and whispered, "You want to go, don't you?" He blinked once, then leaned forward and pressed his forehead against mine. His skin was warm and soft. For a moment, everything went quiet. No fear, no noise, just the sound of our breathing. Then the call came again, louder this time, filling the air like thunder. The ground trembled under my feet. Ash pulled free of my arms and ran to the door. I caught him just before he reached it, but before I could stop myself, I opened it. Fog poured in, thick and cold. The forest beyond was alive with movement, massive shapes shifting in the gray. The tallest one stepped forward, slow and careful. It raised one hand, palm out, fingers spread wide. I could see the hair, dark and coarse, dripping with mist. Its eyes met mine, deep, old, knowing. I don't know why, but I lowered the rifle. Ash chirped softly and reached out. The giant took one slow step closer. Close enough for me to feel the ground shake. Then it bent down and made a sound, low and soft like a sigh. For a long time, we just stood there, the three of us, me, the baby, and the creature outside the door. I could feel the air buzzing, heavy with something I couldn't explain. Fear, yes, but also something else, something like peace. Then, just as quietly as they'd come, the sounds faded. The shapes in the fog began to drift back into the woods. The leader turned and disappeared between the trees. I looked down. Ash was gone. Only a small handprint in the mud beside the door remained. The night swallowed the forest again, leaving me standing in the doorway, the fog curling around my feet, wondering if I'd ever see him, or them, again. Morning came soft and pale, the fog lifting slowly off the trees. The forest looked the same as it always had, but it didn't feel the same. Every shadow seemed to hold a memory, every sound a secret. The cabin stood quiet, the door still half open from the night before. I stepped outside barefoot, the cold mud squishing between my toes. The air smelled of rain and pine, but also of something wild, something that didn't belong to people. Where Ash had stood, the ground was pressed flat, small prints fading into the woods. I followed them to the edge of the clearing, where the trees began to close in again. There, on a mossy stump, lay the stone bundle they had left before, but now it was open. Inside were two things, a single white feather and a tuft of soft, gray fur. I didn't know what they meant, but when I touched them, a strange calm filled me. It was like a goodbye, or maybe a thank you. I stayed there a long time, listening. Somewhere deep in the forest, I thought I heard a soft call, low, gentle, almost like the hum Ash used to make before he fell asleep. Then it was gone. That afternoon, I took the camera and deleted every photo, one by one. The world wasn't ready for what lived out there. Maybe it never would be. Some truths aren't meant to be proven. They're meant to be kept safe. As the sun dipped behind the ridges, I locked the door and sat by the fire. The woods outside were silent again, but sometimes, when the wind rose just right, I could still hear that low hum in the distance, like the forest itself remembering. Weeks passed, and the forest began to feel normal again. Or maybe I just wanted it to. I fixed the fence, gathered wood, and tried to pretend my life hadn't changed. But every night, before I blew out the lantern, I caught myself glancing toward the trees. Part of me hoped to see those amber eyes watching from the dark. Sometimes I thought I did. A flicker of movement, a shadow that lingered too long. I never went looking. I didn't have to. The forest had shared its secret with me once, and that was enough. Some bonds, I realized, don't end. They simply go quiet. Now, when I walk the trails alone, I find myself listening differently. Every rustle, every echo in the fog feels like a reminder that we aren't the only ones who call these woods home. I used to think I understood the wild, but now I know it holds more heart than we can ever measure. Somewhere out there, a family moves through the trees, unseen and untouched by the noise of our world. And sometimes, when the wind turns just right, I swear I can still hear that small, gentle hum, telling me they remember too, and that I did the right thing.